See that? That is a lot of rain. I think it was a heat wave here in the studio, 2 days ago? It got up to about 42 degrees here, and now that I want to record, it's now bucketing down with rain. Anyway, this is not a weather channel, this is a fountain pen channel. And the fountain pen I want to talk about today is, well, probably my new favourite fountain pen, at least my favourite fountain pen from China. Which, that is a big claim, because the last time I said this is my new favourite fountain pen from China, I think I was reviewing the Wingsung 3008, and that is a pen to this day which is still probably one of the kings of fountain pens from China in terms of quality control, consistency, and writing experience. But no, this is probably my new favourite fountain pen from China, and it's a pen that actually gives me deja vu to my review of the Wingsung 3008, because it doesn't seem like all that long ago I was sitting here, well not here, in the old studio saying, here's a fountain pen from China, look what they've done, they've incorporated something that you would only get in a high-end Western pen, and they've now put it in a Chinese pen at a pretty good quality and also for not that much money. For the 3008, that was the piston mechanism, and now that's obviously in a lot of Chinese pens. But now we have that with this. This is the Wingsung 3013, and this has a Vacumatic fountain pen mechanism, which is just awesome. Up until loading this pen, I had never owned a Vacumatic pen myself. I'd only used them and seen them in other people's videos, and there is something really special about opening the package and then finally getting your own Vacumatic pen and filling it up for the first time. There is something really special about that. Alright, first time using a vacuum filler. Hopefully it's not 100% overrated. Oh, that is freaking awesome! Oh, I should have bought one of these a long time ago. And as a quick note for anyone who doesn't know what a Vacumatic fountain pen mechanism is, there's probably good reason for that. Vacumatics are quite rare, and I guess for two reasons. First of all, because they're only found on higher end pens, and not that many pens actually. I don't even think Montblanc makes a Vacumatic pen, but a Vacumatic pen also requires pretty tight tolerances in the mechanism to actually work. Much tighter tolerances than that of a piston mechanism, because what you have here is a plunger mechanism and a barrel that flares out at the end. So as you pull the plunger back, there's a one-way valve located in the back part of the screw-in mechanism, and as you pull the plunger back, the air actually escapes from the back part of the barrel, and as you then push the plunger forward, it actually creates a vacuum, and once you get to this flared bit up here, the vacuum then disappears, the pressure is equalized, and as a result, it actually pulls air, or in this case, ink, up into the barrel. It is really one of the coolest mechanisms, and that is why I'm so happy that you can now buy them for, wait for it, $5. $5 is all they're charging for this pen, and even if it came with a dud nib that I could swap out, I would be happy to pay for this, because I think the cheapest and probably the most common Vacumatic fountain pen is the TWSBI Vac 700, a pen that I'm hoping to get one day, but for $6 I am quite happy. So apart from the Vacumatic mechanism, why else do I like this pen? Because it has to suffice other categories to get my favourite fountain pen from China. Well, let's start with, obviously, ergonomics. This is a very comfortable pen to hold. Wingsung have done a very good job at getting their pens really comfortable to hold and use, and this one here is no exception. Capped, this pen is 14.2 centimeters long. Uncapped, it's 13.2 centimeters long. Capped, it's 33 grams in weight. Uncapped, it's 23 grams in weight. And in terms of diameter, at its thickest part, it is 14 millimeters in diameter, and at its slimmest part, it's about 11 millimeters in diameter. So this is, first of all, a very comfortable pen to use, and it's also very weighty. So the first glaring thing that I'll point out is this pen doesn't post whatsoever. There is no way to post this pen. Even if you push on as hard as you want, don't do that because you might break something, but it doesn't post whatsoever. But don't let that get you offside, because even though this pen doesn't post, 132 millimeters long uncapped is for most people. This is quite a long pen. And even though you can't post it, it's still going to be an incredibly heavy pen, which is nice. 23 grams uncapped is really good. That is probably one of the heavier all acrylic pens that I've gotten. Well, all acrylic maybe. The body, most of what you see is acrylic, but there is a fair amount of metal here, and that is what weighs this pen down. It is very weighty in the hand, and that is a very good thing. And the good thing is, even though that there is a lot of metal at the back here where the mechanism is, they've also balanced it with a whole bunch of metal where the section is. And as a result, this is balanced very, very well. Yes, it might be a little bit back heavy, but I've had pens that are much worse than this. This is incredibly comfortable to hold for long periods of time. I've written a lot with this pen. In fact, it is my current EDC pen, and it's just very, very, very comfortable to hold and write with for long periods of time. Yes, there is a little bit of a step down here, but the section here is so long that you don't notice it whatsoever. Also, the section is cylindrical, which means you could hold it pretty much whichever grip you use. It's very comfortable to use. In terms of the aesthetics, there really isn't all that much to complain about. It's a transparent demonstrator pen. I know they're all the rage on the fountain pen market, or at least what you're getting on the Chinese pen market. There's nothing bad about it, yet there's nothing overly amazing about it. I like clear demonstrator pens. I think they look very nice. This one is non-offensive. It looks very, very nice. And especially as an EDC pen, this is fine. It'll fit into pretty much any environment. In terms of build quality, they've done a great job. It's injection molded, and I believe it's injection molded acrylic, and you really do need injection molding to get the tight tolerances that you need for the Vacumatic filling mechanism. And they've done a great job. There have been no issues in terms of the quality whatsoever. There's been no cracking, there's been no leaking. It's been very good. I've dropped it a few times and there hasn't been all that many scratches apart from one drop that I dropped it on concrete, but that's on the metal finial. It took all the abuse that I gave it and there has been no issues whatsoever. One thing that I would look out for though in terms of possible cracking is where the mechanism screws into the plastic body. It is metal threads contacting plastic threads. That's generally where you're going to see cracking, but I've seen a lot of people talk about this pen. I've looked at a lot of reviews of this pen, a lot of people talking about this pen, and I haven't seen anyone talking about any major cracking issues so far, which is a good thing. Now, talking about the mechanism itself, they have done an amazing job at this mechanism. I've had no issues whatsoever. Very few people have had issues with this. It is an amazingly built mechanism. And even more amazingly, this is their own mechanism which they have made themselves, designed themselves. It hasn't been copied from anyone else, and from what I have read, it seems to be the easiest mechanism to use, at least to use and clean, because this is just a simple screw-in mechanism. All you have to do if you want to clean it is screw the back off and it just pops out. No need for a wrench, nothing fancy. It is as simple as that, which is really, really nice. That's why I like the 3008's piston mechanism more than the TWSBI mechanism, because the TWSBI one, you need a proper wrench, which I 100% haven't lost, and with the 3008, it's just a simple screw-out mechanism, which is really nice. In terms of durability of the mechanism, I haven't had any issues, though you're not going to see that many problems with durability and the mechanism, being because you're not going to use the mechanism all that often. This mechanism allows you to hold, 2 mils worth of ink, and that's going to last over a month depending on how much you use the pen, and as a result you're just not going to use the mechanism all that often. As long as you keep the mechanism greased up with some silicone grease every time you clean it, you're not going to see any big issues. I'll also quickly note that some fountain pens use the plunger as a shut-off valve, which means with some fountain pens you need to unscrew the plunger to pull the plunger back so that you can actually use the pen so ink can actually get into the feed. From what I've seen, the Wingsung 3008 plunger is not a shut-off valve, though in my opinion, I think I get more consistent and a little bit wetter ink flow if I unscrew the plunger just a little bit before I use it. But if I don't do that, I still get good feed results, but I prefer it a little bit wetter, so I always unscrew it 1 or 2 turns before I use the pen. Okay, let's talk about the nib of the fountain pen. This is obviously where pens can make it or break it with their quality, and I've got to say, Wingsung, as always, do a really good job at their nibs. I don't know if they're made in-house or if they get someone else to make it and they just sort of stamp their logo on it, but Wingsung have always done a really good job. When I first got this pen, there was a little bit of confusion as to who actually made this pen. If it was Wingsung, the people who make the 3008, or if it was the Wingsung that make the Wingsung 698. And from looking at the nib and using it, I'm more inclined to say it was the same Wingsung who made the 698. And that just comes down to the quality of the nib. The pen uses a pilot imitation nib, and from what I've seen, there is a lot of varying quality in the pilot imitation nibs that you get from China. Depending on which brand you get them from, they can be outstanding or they can be, well, rather terrible. And the pilot nibs that you get from the Wingsung 3003 and the Wingsung 3001 are a lot worse than the ones you get on the Wingsung 698, which are obviously found on much more expensive pens, so I'm more inclined to believe that this is much more similar to the one that you get on the 698. And I've got to say, it is a great nib. I've got to say, it's probably almost on the same quality as the real deal pilot nib. It's not just there yet, but it's almost on par with it. And that is probably one of the biggest compliments I could give to a nib, at least a nib that's shaped like a real deal pilot nib. It's really good. The grinding that they do and the polishing on the nib is just perfect. There's no sweet spot on this nib, it's just very smooth no matter how you use it. It's not hard as nails, which is nice. There is a little bit of flex in it. What can I say? The nib is really good. The feed, on the other hand, it has its foibles. Some people get their feeds and say the feeds are just rubbish, it's unusable, and some people have no issues whatsoever. I was lucky to get a feed that was sort of somewhere in the middle. Maybe that's why I have to unscrew the plunger just a little bit to get a little bit better ink flow, but the pen that I got has its issues. I had to clean it out and reset the nib so it would work, and I would also have to shim the tines of the fountain pen to get more ink to flow out of it, and once I was able to do that, I got a pretty great writer, I gotta say. And that is one of the issues with this pen. This pen has few issues, but that is one of the issues that creeps out just because some people say they got this pen and it doesn't work at all. And it's for that one reason that coming to a conclusion with this pen was a little bit hard. Look, this is probably one of the best fountain pens you can buy from China, at least for under $10. I spent, $5, $6 on this pen, and I got an amazing writer, a pen that is really durable. This is proper acrylic, you get a Vacumatic mechanism, all of that. The only downside is that quality control, at least for this feed, is not 100% there. If you get example of this pen, you're going to love it straight out of the box. But if you don't, you're going to have to tinker around with the feed, maybe even buy a replacement feed and swap that, because that's what some people had to do to get this pen to work. And it's for that one reason that I would say, if you're looking at getting this pen, which I strongly recommend if you ever want a Vacumatic filling mechanism pen, I strongly recommend this pen, but only if you feel comfortable with possibly having to get replacement feeds or tinkering around with the feeds or shimming the nib or whatever to get it working. This is not a beginner fountain pen, but this is a pen that I really strongly recommend. Hello everyone, welcome to the writing sample for the Wingsung 3013 with a fine nib. You know, they produce an amazing pen and they still don't know how to come up with a even half attractive naming system for their pens. The paper that I'm using is just Clairefontaine. The ink that I'm using is Monteverde's Sapphire ink and it looks really beautiful. I love this ink a lot. Okay, quick writing sample. And as you can see from that writing sample, no issues whatsoever. Once this nib gets underway and you get it writing well, it is really good. This is the fine version and I really like their fine nib. They do an amazing job with it. No issues whatsoever. Whilst there is a little bit of springiness in the nib, it really won't come out all that apparent with everyday writing. Though the writing is very, very nice. This is a really good nib, especially for everyday writing. In terms of quick writing, there we go. I can never do quick writing, but no issues whatsoever. The flow is really good, no hard starts, no skipping whatsoever. I will note that with this I have the back of the pen undone a little bit for a little bit of extra flow. Some people say it probably doesn't do anything. I reckon it makes it flow just that little bit extra better. In terms of line variation, nope, that was my mistake there. I don't think there's all that much between the downstrokes and the side strokes. Wingsung, you know, there's generally not too much variation. The nibs are really ground more like a ball, so the side strokes are very much similar to the downstrokes. In terms of line variation, there it is with no pressure, and let's slowly increase pressure. And as you can see, if you push too much, it does start to railroad a little bit. All you have to do, if the feed gets a little bit dry, is just tap it a few times, and it's like new. Though, there doesn't seem to be all that much line variation, though there is a bit of spring to the nib, there isn't all that much flex to it, so you're not going to get all that much contrast. In terms of reverse writing, you actually do get an okay-ish reverse writer. Chinese pens typically are really good at reverse writing. This one here is scratchy. I've used a lot better pens that reverse write than this, but it's okay. It's fine. It's very fine, but if you want to reverse write, just get a finer nibbed pen. In terms of wetness, moderate wetness, I think, especially for a Chinese pen. It's maybe a little bit wetter than the feed, the Japanese feed that it clones itself from, though overall not super duper wet.